You know, people always say, parents should be proud of their children. And I was. I truly was. I even bought myself a new outfit, a soft beige blouse and some charcoal trousers that didn't wrinkle in the suitcase. It was a long trip from Oregon to Connecticut. 2 flights and a bumpy taxi ride. My knees ached, my back buzzed with tension, but I didn't complain. I never did. Not when I worked back-to-back night shifts at the nursing clinic. Not when I refinanced my house so Daniel could go to Columbia. Not even when I co-signed the loan and drained my retirement savings so he and Carla could buy their forever home. So when he opened the door in his perfect little neighborhood, rows of symmetrical homes, tightly trimmed hedges, and smiling strangers in golf shorts, I smiled. I smiled even though he looked right past me and muttered, "Don't tell the neighbors you're my mother." He said it under his breath, barely moving his lips, like a ventriloquist trying to keep the truth hidden behind his teeth. I didn't ask why. I didn't flinch. I just nodded like a stranger greeting a host. The man across the street waved at us, watering his lawn with a glistening green hose. Daniel waved back. Carla didn't come to the door. She was inside, she said later, getting the baby down for a nap. That baby, the one I hadn't met yet. It had been a full year since they bought the place. I'd fallen a month after the move and broke 2 ribs. Daniel said not to worry, that there would be plenty of time to visit once the guest room was ready. It was never ready. Until now. He let me in like I was a visiting tenant. Not a mother. Not the reason he even had a front door. "Shoes off here," he said, gesturing at the tile. Carla just had the floors done. The floor was expensive. I could feel it through my socks. I took a slow breath and glanced around. Abstract art on the walls. A glass sculpture on a minimalist table. A scent diffuser shaped like a pearl gently puffed out lavender. No coat hooks. No clutter. No welcome. Carla breezed in from the kitchen, a glass of white wine in one hand, phone in the other. "Mary Beth," she said, her voice somewhere between a smile and a grimace. "We weren't sure which flight you were on." "I texted yesterday," I said softly. "Oh," she blinked. "Right. Must have missed that." She disappeared before I could say more. Back into her sleek kitchen. I stood with my coat still draped over my arm, holding a tin of raspberry buns. The ones Daniel used to beg me to make when he was little. I baked them that morning at 4 a.m., then carried them through 2 airports and 1 grumbling cab. I held them now like a peace offering no one asked for. "Just leave them on the counter," Carla called over her shoulder. "We're gluten-free now. But maybe the kids will want some." The kids. Her kids. Not mine. I'd never heard their voices before, never even seen their faces outside of social media posts I wasn't tagged in. 2 of them ran past me, saying a quick, distracted hello before thundering up the stairs. They didn't know me. Didn't care to. My own granddaughter, the baby Carla had with Daniel, was somewhere upstairs. Asleep in a white bassinet that probably cost more than my entire kitchen. Daniel hung my coat in the narrow closet near the door. Not the one in the hallway. Not the main one, where I saw stylish jackets and handbags carefully lined up like a boutique. This was the overflow space. The guest area. "Let me show you the room," he said. "Not your room. Just the room." He walked me down the hallway past a door that read private office in tiny etched letters, like this was a workplace and I was some unannounced client. The guest room was cold. Unpersonal. Crisp white sheets. No chair. No photos. Not even a book on the nightstand. Just a little printed Wi-Fi card. "Welcome to Thorn House. Password, Thornhouse 1. Thornhouse. What a joke. My last name is Myers. That house was half mine. In fact, legally, it was more than half mine. I paid the entire down payment, $240,000, from the savings I built over decades. The deed still had my name on it. It was never transferred. Daniel said it was just a formality. To help get us started, Mom. For our future. For our family. And I believed him. Of course I did. I always believed him. I waited until the door clicked shut and then unzipped my purse. There it was, the original deed, folded neatly inside a yellow envelope. I held it in my lap, heart pounding, and slowly pulled it out, careful like it might burn my skin. I took a photo with my phone and put it back. Zipped it shut. Tomorrow, I told myself. Tomorrow I'd take a walk. Just clear my head. Maybe call someone who could remind me how ownership works. The entryway smelled like vanilla candles and new paint. Everything inside was pristine, beige walls, glossy floors, minimalist decor. A big sign above the fireplace read, "Family is everything." I stood there for a moment, holding my gift bag like an idiot, while my son called out, "Emily. She's here." His wife emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. She gave me a quick smile. Not fake, exactly. Just formal. "Hi," she said, like I was a neighbor from 2 blocks away. "You must be tired. Let me show you the guest room." No hug. No welcome. Not even a "how was your flight?" I followed her upstairs, past photos on the wall, the kids at the beach, the dog in a Santa hat, my son and his wife at a winery. I wasn't in a single one of them. The guest room was clean. Sterile. White bedspread, hotel lamp, a small diffuser humming lavender into the air. There were 2 fresh towels on the bed. One of them still had the price tag. "You can freshen up if you want," she said, already halfway out the door. I stayed there for a moment, looking at myself in the mirror. My travel clothes were wrinkled, my hair limp. I looked every bit the tired old woman I was. I placed the lighthouse on the dresser and plugged it in. The little bulb inside glowed weakly. Dinner was awkward. They ordered takeout instead of cooking. The kids, Liam and Sophie, were polite but distant, like they'd been coached. They called me Miss Rachel. Not Grandma. Not even Nana. Just Miss Rachel. Even the dog barked when I tried to pet him. After the kids went to bed, I sat on the couch holding a mug of tea, trying not to ask the question burning inside me. But I couldn't help it. "Why did you tell me not to say I'm your mother?" My son flinched. He rubbed his face, sighed. "It's complicated, Mom." "No," I said softly. "It's really not." He looked down. "People here, they're different. It's a tight-knit community. Everyone's young. Modern. Most people think I was raised by my aunt." That's what I told them. "Your aunt," I repeated. "So I'm not good enough to be your mother anymore?" He shook his head. "That's not it. You just don't fit the image." I stared at him, feeling the air grow thick around me. "What image is that?" He didn't answer. His wife stood silently in the doorway, not even looking at me. I felt the blood drain from my face. I set the mug down. It clinked too loudly on the table. "Thank you for letting me stay," I said quietly. "I won't be a bother." And I went upstairs to the guest room, where the lighthouse glowed faintly in the dark, the only thing in that house that still remembered who I was. I lay in bed with the lighthouse casting soft ripples of light across the white walls. The house was silent except for distant murmurs, my son and his wife, talking in the kitchen below. Then laughter. I hadn't heard him laugh like that in years. And it didn't include me. I pulled the blanket tighter around my shoulders, blinking back the ache behind my eyes. I didn't want to eavesdrop, but the house was quiet and their voices traveled. "I was so nervous she'd make it awkward," his wife said. My son laughed. "She's being better than I expected, honestly." "She looked at the pictures," his wife said. "I forgot to take them down." "It's fine. She'll be gone soon." Gone soon. I stared at the ceiling, that phrase echoing in my chest. Not "she's only here for a short time." Not "she's visiting." Just gone. I was a phase. A problem. Something to endure. I clutched the edge of the blanket and thought of the years I worked doubles to pay for his school trips. The nights I stayed up sewing Halloween costumes. The birthday cake I made when I couldn't afford gifts, shaped like a pirate ship, with pretzel masts and little sails I cut from notebook paper. They had no idea. Or maybe they did, and just didn't care. The next morning, I made breakfast. Old habits die hard. I woke early, crept downstairs, and found eggs, flour, milk. Made pancakes the way he used to love them, small, soft, full of blueberries. I even made the little bear shape I used to do when he was 5. They didn't come down until after 9. "Smells good," he said flatly, pouring himself coffee. The kids looked at the food like it was alien. Liam picked a pancake apart with his fork. Sophie asked if there was almond milk for her cereal. They barely ate. His wife said, "You didn't have to do all this." I smiled. I wanted to. Later, I found the bear-shaped pancake in the trash. That evening, they went out for dinner. "A friends-only gathering," they said. "You'll probably be tired from the flight anyway." I wasn't tired. I sat on the couch in that cold, beautiful living room, watching the lighthouse glow beside me. The house made no sound. No clock ticking. No laughter. Just the faint hum of the fridge and the buzz of silence. That's when I saw the family calendar on the wall. In neat handwriting, every day was filled: dentist appointments, soccer practice, yoga, brunch. But one date stood out. A big red circle around Sunday. Next to it, open house. Meet the neighbors. And underneath, in lighter pencil, Mom leaves. Just like that. Like the end of an event. A footnote in a schedule. I pressed my hand to my chest. Not from pain. Just trying to remind myself I still had a heartbeat. It was morning. I'd gone outside to hang up a few wet tea towels, just like I used to do at home. Their laundry machine was fancy, with too many buttons, so I figured the sun could still do its old-fashioned magic. The air smelled like salt and jasmine. Seagulls circled above the rooftops. For a moment, it almost felt peaceful. Then a woman from next door waved at me over the fence. She was tall, with bright lipstick and a loud laugh. She walked toward me, sunglasses perched on her head like a tiara. "Oh. You must be the cleaner. I'd been meaning to ask if you'd be willing to take on another house. My husband is hopeless with dust." I blinked. "Cleaner?" I wiped my hands on the damp towel and said softly, "No. I'm his mother." Her smile faltered. Oh. I'm so sorry." I thought. She paused, then laughed nervously. "Well, you do keep things so neat." I forced a smile. That's what mothers do. But something inside me had already cracked. When she left, I stood there for a long time. I looked at my hands, the same ones that had held his when he cried over a skinned knee. The same hands that had cupped his face when he graduated. That had helped pack his things when he moved out. How could they mistake me for someone they paid? Maybe because that's all I was now, someone who tidied up quietly, stayed out of the way, and would be gone by Sunday. When I came back inside, my granddaughter was on her phone at the dining table. She didn't even look up. I said gently, "Do you want me to braid your hair again, like I did yesterday?" She replied without glancing at me, "No offense, but Mom said I shouldn't get too used to it." Too used to it. As if love had an expiration date. I turned and walked slowly back to the guest room, the coldest room in the house, and sat on the edge of the bed. On the dresser was a small photo of them at the beach. I wasn't in it. I never had been. That evening, I didn't come down for dinner. No one knocked to ask if I was okay. They laughed again downstairs. And I listened. It was Saturday. I woke up early, as always. Made coffee, strong, black, the way my late husband liked it, and sat quietly in the kitchen, waiting for the house to stir. I'd overheard them talking the night before. Something about the boardwalk. Funnel cake. A roller coaster. Laughter. So I brushed my hair, changed into a clean blouse, and waited by the stairs like a child on the first day of school. When I heard footsteps, my heart fluttered. The kids came down first, dressed in bright colors, faces glowing with excitement. Then my daughter-in-law, hair up in a bun, holding sunscreen and a wide-brimmed hat. And finally my son, adjusting his watch, calling out something about parking apps. I smiled and said softly, "I can pack some water bottles if you like." He glanced at me. then turned to his wife. She spoke first. "Oh. We weren't sure if you'd want to come, with the noise and the walking. We just thought you might like to relax today. Take it easy. Take it easy." As if that's what I'd flown across the country to do. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Of course. That makes sense. My grandson chimed in, "Yeah, Grandma. It's kinda boring for old people anyway." They were already halfway out the door. I stood in the hallway, still holding my cardigan, as the door closed behind them. I didn't cry. Not right away. Instead, I sat at the window and watched the car pull out of the driveway. I waved, even though no one looked back. Hours passed. No calls. No texts. No, "Are you okay, Mom?" So I took out a notebook from my bag, one I always carry, and began to write down what I saw. One bluebird in the garden. A spider weaving between two railings. Silence that isn't peace. When they returned, sun-kissed, holding bags of cotton candy, I was still in the same spot. My son kissed my head absently and said, "Next time, okay?" I nodded. But there wouldn't be a next time. The next morning, I rose early again. I wanted to do something kind, something that might bring back a sliver of the connection I felt we'd lost. So I cooked. It wasn't anything fancy. Just my son's favorite from when he was little, potato pancakes with onions, fried golden and crispy. The way my mother used to make them for us when money was tight and love was the only spice we had. I opened the windows, tied on an apron, and filled the kitchen with the warm smell of sizzling oil and soft memories. But when they came down the stairs, her first, then the children, they stopped. Ugh, my daughter-in-law wrinkled her nose. "What's that smell?" My grandson mimicked her. "Smells like Grandma's closet." I laughed nervously. "I made breakfast. Thought I'd surprise you all." My son stepped in last. He looked tired. Or annoyed. It was hard to tell. He sniffed. "Mom, you didn't have to do this. We don't usually eat fried food. It kind of lingers in the curtains, you know?" I blinked. "Oh. I didn't realize. I just remembered you loved these." He picked up a pancake with 2 fingers, as if it were something fragile and foreign. Took a bite. Chewed. Swallowed. "They're okay," he said. "Just different than I remember." No one else touched them. I stood by the stove and watched as they poured their oat milk into glass cups, sliced avocados onto toast, and spoke about calories and air fryers. I scraped my pancakes into the trash when they left. I didn't eat that morning. But the house smelled like my childhood all day. That part, at least, was mine. That evening, I was folding towels in the laundry room when I heard them come in from the park. I could tell by the way the front door slammed, like a punctuation mark to a conversation I wasn't part of. I stayed quiet. I'd learned to do that over the years. Be helpful. Be invisible. But I heard a small voice float into the hallway. "Daddy," my grandson said. "Who's the lady who lives in the little room?" He meant me. My hands froze on a towel. I waited for the answer. My son laughed, lightly, awkwardly. "She just helps out around the house, buddy. Like a cleaning lady." Silence. Then, more laughter. "His wife's this time." The boy's voice again, "But why does she always smile at me like she knows me?" I stood there, clutching the towel, holding my breath. My fingers trembled. "She's just being nice," my son said quickly. "Some people do that." I didn't come out of the laundry room for a long time. I didn't want them to see my face. Because in that moment, I wasn't sure who I was either. Not mother. Not grandmother. Just the cleaning lady. And even that was a kindness. Because real cleaning ladies are acknowledged. That night, I lay on the thin mattress in the guest room, the room they'd insisted was perfect for me when I arrived, but which felt more like a converted storage closet. No windows. No warmth. Just 4 walls and a door they always kept shut. I stared at the ceiling and replayed the words over and over again. The cleaning lady. It echoed like a cruel lullaby in my ears. I raised that boy. The man who now introduces me like I'm a stranger. I fed him when I couldn't feed myself. I worked 2 jobs to put shoes on his feet. I didn't buy new clothes for 5 years so he could wear a suit to graduation. I was there through every illness, heartbreak, scraped knee, and sleepless night. I taught him how to ride a bike, how to tie his shoes, how to pray. And now I'm just the cleaning lady. But what hurt more than the words was how naturally they came out of his mouth. As if it wasn't the first time. As if this was his regular story for the world, just someone who helps out. A helper. A ghost. An inconvenience he tolerated in silence. I wanted to confront him. I wanted to walk into his bedroom and scream, "How dare you?" But instead, I lay in the dark and remembered the last time I saw his father. It was raining that day, too. I'd just come home from a late shift. Your father had been gone for 2 weeks without explanation. I found a note on the table. I can't do this anymore. Take care of him. No name. No goodbye. Just silence. I didn't cry that day. I packed a lunch for my son. I got him dressed for school. I walked him to the bus stop. And when he asked, "Where's Daddy?" I told him, "He's working far away. He'll be back." He never came back. And now, decades later, my own son is doing the same to me, erasing me silently, without confrontation or clarity. Making me disappear by degrees. Not with anger, but with shame. The next morning, I decided to make breakfast for them. Not to please. Just to remind myself who I am. I made his favorite, French toast with cinnamon and powdered sugar. The way I used to when he was 8 and didn't want to get out of bed. I served it with warm syrup, orange juice, and a little bowl of strawberries, just like before. They came downstairs late. His wife looked surprised. He looked uncomfortable. "Oh, you didn't have to do that," she said. "I know," I replied. "I wanted to." My grandson sat at the table and dug in happily. "This is so good," he said, his mouth full. "Did you make this?" I smiled. "Yes, baby. I did." He looked at me and grinned. "You should cook more often. You're better than Daddy." I laughed softly, and my son's face tightened. "All right, that's enough," he said to the boy. Then he turned to me and whispered, "You don't need to do this. We have our own routine." "I know," I said quietly. But I couldn't help but notice how quickly he cleared the plate. That afternoon, I went out for a walk. I needed air. I needed to remember who I was before I became invisible. A neighbor, a woman in her 60s, was outside watering her flowers. She looked up and smiled. "Hi there. Visiting?" I nodded. "Yes. I'm staying with my son for a bit." "Oh. You must be his mother," she said. "You look just like him around the eyes." I blinked. I smiled. I wanted to cry. "Yes," I said. "I'm his mother." The woman smiled back. "You must be so proud. He talks a lot about his job. Never mentioned you were here." I froze. Of course he didn't. Because to his neighbors, I wasn't real. I wasn't someone to be mentioned. I was the woman he asked to hide. That evening, when I returned, I heard him in the backyard, talking on the phone. He didn't see me through the sliding glass door. No, don't worry. She's not staying long," he said. A pause. "She's just going through something." I couldn't say no. "You know how it is." Another pause. "No, she doesn't talk to anyone. She keeps to herself." I stepped away from the glass before he could see me. I'd heard enough. That night, I didn't sleep. The couch in the laundry room creaked every time I shifted, but it wasn't the noise keeping me awake. It was the memory of my grandson's question echoing in my head. "Who is the lady in the little room?" And my son's answer, like a dagger wrapped in politeness. "She's just the cleaning lady." He said it so easily. As if it were true. As if that's all I'd ever been. I stared at the ceiling in the dim light from the hallway, counting the spots where plaster had cracked. Somewhere behind the wall, the washing machine clicked as it cooled. And I remembered. I remembered scrubbing that very machine when he was 7, using an old toothbrush because we couldn't afford new sponges. I remembered staying up late, hand-washing his school uniform shirt after he spilled juice on it, because he didn't want to be the smelly kid. I remembered selling my gold ring, the one thing I'd inherited from my mother, to buy him football boots that he would outgrow in 3 months. And now, all I was someone who helps out. Not mom. Not even mama. Just the help. It's not that I expected glory. I didn't need parades or applause. I never asked for thanks. I just wanted him to remember who I was. What I did. What I gave up. And instead, I was airbrushed out of his life. The next morning, I made breakfast for them, as usual. Pancakes for the little one, coffee with 2 sugars for my son, herbal tea for his wife. I didn't speak. I didn't look them in the eye. I just placed plates gently on the table, like I'd been trained to do. Thanks, his wife said casually. You're a lifesaver. I smiled and nodded. But inside, I wanted to scream. I am not your staff. I am not your convenience. I am his mother. But my son didn't even look up from his phone. He just chewed, scrolled, and grunted in agreement. Later that afternoon, I went out to the garden. They had a perfect little backyard with trimmed hedges and clean patio tiles. My son was obsessed with appearances now, everything had to be spotless. I took a seat on the edge of a wooden planter. My back ached from years of bending and lifting. My hands were dry and cracked. My knees hurt. I heard my grandson's voice again through the window. He was asking about family photos, why there weren't any of the cleaning lady in the living room. The wife answered something vague, something about keeping the decor minimal. And I sat there, under the sun, feeling like a ghost haunting a house she paid for with her spine. I remembered when he was 16 and told me he'd never forget what I'd done for him. He cried when I worked 2 jobs so he could go on the school trip. He promised me that when he grew up, he'd buy me a house. And in a way, he had. But not as a mother. As a shadow. A silent figure in the corner who never speaks unless spoken to. Who folds. Washes. Smiles. And disappears when the guests arrive. The morning light filtered weakly through the curtains as I sat at the small kitchen table, sipping the bitter coffee that they left for me. I watched as my son and his wife moved around the house, busy, distracted, wrapped up in their perfect little lives. I felt like a shadow, a ghost haunting the edges of their existence. I had been silent for too long. Too long pretending that their dismissal, their indifference, didn't hurt. Too long swallowing the ache of being unseen by my own son. That day, I made a decision. I would not be invisible anymore. I wouldn't let the label cleaning lady define me. I took out the folder with the original property documents, the ones with my name in bold, official letters. I took my phone and photographed every page, every signature, every line that proved I owned half of that house. I thought of what I would do with this evidence. How I would hold it like a shield. That evening, at their dinner party, I waited until the guests arrived. I walked calmly into the living room, holding my phone in one hand and the folder in the other. Everyone stopped talking. I looked at my son, then at his guests. I have something to show you, I said quietly but firmly. I opened the folder and laid the papers on the coffee table. There was a stunned silence. My son's face went pale. His guests looked confused. Mom, he started, but I raised my hand. No, Daniel. You forgot to mention that this house isn't just yours. I helped you buy it, I said. I paid the down payment. I worked my entire life for this. I watched their faces change, disbelief, shock, embarrassment. I wasn't just helping out. I was the owner. The mother. And I wasn't going anywhere. The room was heavy with silence. No one moved. The guests glanced awkwardly between me and Daniel. He looked at me with a mixture of anger and shame. You shouldn't have done this, he said quietly. I had to, I replied. Because you forgot to tell the truth. He took a deep breath. I'm sorry, Mom. I never wanted to hurt you. I just wanted to protect this life we've built. Protect? I repeated, voice trembling. By erasing your own mother? He looked down, unable to meet my eyes. It's complicated, he said. I know it is, I said. But I deserve to be part of this family. Not a secret. The room remained tense. Then Carla, his wife, spoke softly. We didn't mean to exclude you. It's difficult. Difficult? I said. Try being invisible to your own son. The guests shifted uncomfortably. I realized then how far the divide was between us. They had created a polished, perfect world, one that had no place for me. But I wasn't finished. I told them about the sacrifices I'd made, the late nights, the empty stomachs, the jobs I took just to pay for Daniel's college tuition. I told them about the dreams I had for our family. Some of the guests looked moved, some avoided my gaze. But Daniel's face was unreadable. Finally, I stood up. I'm here. Whether you want me or not. I left the room before anyone could reply. After that evening, things didn't magically fix themselves. The house felt colder, not because of the weather, but because of the silence that settled between me and Daniel. He no longer greeted me in the mornings, and I no longer waited for his acknowledgement. The kids would smile when they saw me, but the warmth never came from Daniel's eyes. I kept to my routines, making breakfast, tidying up, trying to hold on to the fragile thread of family. One afternoon, I found a note slipped under my door. It was from Carla. We appreciate everything you do, but please give us some space. This house isn't just a home, it's a sanctuary for us. We're trying to make it work. Her words felt polite but distant, like a soft door closing gently but firmly between us. I understood. This was their life, carefully curated, carefully controlled. And I was the uninvited guest who had overstayed her welcome. Yet, despite the coldness, I still held on to hope. Hope that maybe, someday, Daniel would remember who I really was. The woman who had raised him. The woman who loved him more than anyone else ever could. But as days turned into weeks, that hope felt more and more fragile, like a candle flickering against the wind. One quiet Sunday morning, I was cleaning the living room, as usual. The house was unusually still, no laughter, no footsteps running about. Just silence. Suddenly, I heard a soft knock on the back door. I opened it to see my grandson, Nathan, standing there with a curious look. "Grandma, can I talk to you?" he asked shyly. My heart tightened. This little boy, so innocent, so pure, was the only one who still saw me as family. We sat in the garden, under the old oak tree. Nathan told me how he missed the stories I used to tell him when he was younger, about when I was young and strong. He asked why he never saw pictures of me in the house, why no one talked about me. Tears welled in my eyes as I explained how sometimes adults forget what really matters. He hugged me tight and whispered, "I love you, Grandma." In that moment, I felt a flicker of warmth in the cold house. But I knew that little things like that were rare and fragile, like a single flower growing in a desert. Later that day, Daniel came home early. I hoped for a sign, a change, anything. But he barely glanced at me and went straight to his study. I realized then that the walls between us were thicker than ever. Yet, I held on to Nathan's words, a small beacon of hope in the shadows. Weeks passed, and I kept living in this strange in-between world. Part mother, part stranger, part shadow. One afternoon, as I was going through some old boxes I had brought from Oregon, I found something I hadn't seen in years, a faded envelope addressed to Daniel. It was a letter I wrote when he was just a boy, full of hope and promises. I hadn't intended to show it to anyone, it was my secret, my proof of the love I gave him before the world changed. But now, with the coldness growing, I decided to share it. At dinner, when the family was gathered, I took out the letter. I cleared my throat and began reading aloud. My voice shook as I told the story of a young mother, scared but determined, who dreamed of a better life for her son. The letter spoke of sacrifices, of love without conditions, of hopes for a future they could share. Some faces softened. Daniel's expression flickered, maybe regret, maybe something else. When I finished, I folded the letter carefully and looked at each of them. "I never stopped loving you," I said. "And I never will." For a moment, the room was still. Then Daniel finally spoke, quietly. "Mom, I'm sorry." It wasn't the apology I hoped for, but it was a start. After that evening, something shifted, quietly, slowly, almost imperceptibly. Daniel stopped avoiding me. He began to include me in small moments, a brief conversation over coffee, asking about my health, sharing a news story. It wasn't much, but it was enough to crack the wall between us. One afternoon, Nathan came to me excitedly with a drawing, a family portrait. In it, I was there, smiling beside Daniel and Carla and the kids. Tears welled up as I hugged him tightly. That simple drawing became a symbol of something precious, hope. I realized that rebuilding what was broken would take time, patience, and forgiveness. But I was willing to try. Because family, complicated and imperfect, was worth fighting for. Months went by, and our relationship slowly grew more real, more honest. But healing isn't a straight path. One night, after a small family dinner, Daniel pulled me aside. "Mom," he said, "I'm still angry. Not just at you, but at myself. At how things turned out." I nodded, understanding the weight behind those words. "We both have scars," I said gently. He looked at me, eyes glistening. "I don't know if I can ever fully forgive," he admitted. "That's okay," I told him. "Forgiveness takes time. And sometimes, it means learning to love with the scars." We stood there, two flawed souls trying to mend what life had broken. In that moment, I realized family isn't about perfection. It's about holding on, even when the road is rough. The day came when I stopped being the invisible mother. At a small family gathering, not a party, just a quiet Sunday, Daniel looked at me differently. No whispered warnings, no cold shoulders. Instead, there was acknowledgement. He took my hand. "Mom, I want you here. Not just as a guest, but as family." Tears spilled down my cheeks. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't suddenly easy. But it was real. I realized that years of pain and silence couldn't be erased overnight. But with patience, love, and truth, we began to write a new story. One where I was seen. One where I belonged. And that made every sacrifice worth it. I sat in the quiet of my kitchen that night, long after the last echo of footsteps had faded. The floor was still warm from where I had stood, holding back tears, holding back years. I hadn't said a word after they walked out. I didn't need to. The silence that followed was not empty. It was full of everything I had once given. Meals cooked from scratch. Bills paid without being asked. Toys repaired. Tears wiped. Lullabies hummed under my breath while I rubbed their backs so they could sleep. And now, they were gone. Just like that. I opened the drawer beside the sink. There were the tiny notes my grandson once wrote to me, messy hearts, misspelled love, crayon fingerprints that still made me smile. I held one of them to my chest and closed my eyes. That boy had asked me once if I'd be there forever. I said yes. And I meant it. But they didn't. Their version of forever had an expiration date. It lasted only as long as I stayed useful, quiet, and small. I walked into the living room. The lamp was still on, casting a warm light on the empty couch where we once huddled under blankets watching cartoons. I saw the cushion where my son had sat the day he told me to please not embarrass him. Not to speak too loud. Not to remind people of who I really was, his mother. A sound caught in my throat. Not quite a sob. Not quite a laugh. Something in between, the sound a heart makes when it finally gives up holding on to people who have already let go. I went outside and sat on the front steps. The air smelled like late summer, grass, dust, a hint of smoke from someone's barbecue down the street. Families still laughing behind fences. Lights still glowing in windows. The world didn't stop just because mine had shifted. But mine did shift. And I wasn't the same woman who stepped off that plane with warm cookies in her bag and hope in her chest. That version of me, the mother who wanted only to see her son proud, who brought joy in Tupperware and kindness and silence, she didn't make it back. She stayed in that hallway, where her son whispered that he was ashamed to introduce her. I stood up, slowly. My knees ached, but they held me. They always had. And for the first time in years, I walked back into my house and locked the door behind me. Thank you for watching this deeply personal story about love, pain, and the complicated bonds of family. Sometimes, the people closest to us can make us feel invisible, but healing is possible, even after years of silence. If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe for more real-life stories that touch the heart and reveal the strength of the human spirit. Remember, family isn't perfect, but it's worth fighting for. Thank you for being here.